This is going to be part 8 of the series of tutorials for our City Spell app. It's also the second one in stage 3. In the previous tutorial, which was number 7, or the first one in stage 3, we got as far as step number 9 in the guide, where we gave the TextMesh Pro all the right settings. That means that in especially the game window, we should be seeing the text right in front of us. In the scene window, of course, we can, turn around and look at it any way we can, and so on. And now it's time, like we said, to start giving the city, the look of a haunted city, which is like the whole premise of the story. So, what we're going to do in step number 10 is add some fog or dust. We're going to find in the teacher's assets, standard assets. We've used that wonderful package before. Inside particle systems, prefabs, we're going to find dust storm, drag it to the hierarchy. It's not a child of anything, and give it these parameters that are in the written guide. So, project, teacher's assets, standard assets, particle systems, prefab, dust storm, drag it in. And we could start already seeing it since it's, previewing. Let's make sure we're giving it the right parameters. For this game. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, make room. Okay. Let's see. So Dust Storm. As far as its X, Y, and Z, let me reset first. X0, Y 3.5, I'm moving it a little above ground. Z -6, so a little towards me. You're going to see Y in a second. Here's the idea. If I look at it from above, at the whole thing, and switching to no, and here it is. You see how the dust storm covers a very small part of my city. I wanted to cover most of my city. So moving it up a little bit so it doesn't touch the floor. Then -6 is so when I scale it to 2.5. See how it becomes much wider in the X, and 4.5 is as far as its depth. Now it's covering most of my city. I don't want to do too much, but that's good enough. The duration and everything else here doesn't need to be changed. Duration 5, check. 0.52. Everything else is pretty much the same. Nothing has changed too much. I want to make sure that the scaling mode is shape, because if the scaling mode, when it comes to particle systems, if the scaling mode is wrong, then it doesn't really scale. If I could do hierarchy, you see how it's not exactly what I want it to be. Or if it's local, I want it to be shape. And then it scales correctly to what I want. Everything else, I believe, does not need to be changed. Yep, cool. Which means we're getting to step number 11, which says this is a good, milestone. At this point, it could be a good time to build if you have a quest available to you or have access to one. And if you don't, we're going to build it when everything is, when the whole game is done. Which brings us to part C, or step 12, where we're going to take care of the lighting. First of all, we're going to change the directional light to be much, much, much dimmer and more mysterious. Like this. The direction light usually, is the sun. It should not, look sunny. So first of all, I'm going to do this, reset the, see how, immediately we're getting a big change. 0, Y 3, Z3. Rotation, remember rotation symbolizes kind of like the time of day. So 0.07 on the X, -30 on the Y, 111. Okay, we're good. We're gonna give it some sort of like okay, so 030 negative 30. We're good, and it's a directional light. We're gonna make it like nice and kind of bluish. See how it changes, especially the reflections in the windows. The mode is mixed, although that doesn't really make much of a difference. Intensity much lower, 0.21. Indirect multiplier 1, no shadows. I don't need these to cast shadows. Render mode auto, because it's not that important. It's going to be one little part. So right now it looks definitely like, a sunset. Then we're going to find, we're going to change the skybox. So far we got, the default skybox. We're going to change the skybox to like a night sky. But we don't have a skybox yet. What we do have is a texture that we can turn into a skybox. So this is also a good lesson into how to create your own skyboxes. So I'm going to find in the teacher's assets under textures. I'm going to find my night sky. Now, it so happens that it's already what it needs to be. But usually when you bring in a texture type, instead of texture type shape cube, it's like a regular 2D. In other words, it's just, a picture. We're going to make sure that its texture shape is cube, because that's really what we're going to, okay, default cube. And that's important. And if we made any changes in it, okay, my night sky, default cube, and make sure that if you did make any changes to apply them. Right now I didn't make any changes, so I'm applying them. The important thing is this change that we made in the texture shape. Otherwise it would be just interpreted as like an albedo shape. Then we're going to create a new material in my materials. Create material. I'm going to call it my night sky. Open it up. The shader is not going to be standard. It's going to be from the family of shaders called Skybox, which uses a cube map. So my night sky, not standard, but Skybox. And out of all the different kinds of skybox, a cube map. And then it's asking me, the main question it's asking me is what cube map to use. Select, I'm going to select my night sky. And then it gets, I'm starting to see what this is going to look like. In addition, there's two other controls called exposure and rotation. I'm not going to rotate it at all, but I'm going to reduce the rotation to 0.56. The tint color does not need to be changed, so exposure instead of 1, 0.56, about half. So it's darker. See how the exposure can make the sky lighter or darker. So I made it darker than the actual texture. I want it to look dark and mysterious. And then finally we can start, using it in our environment. So what we're going to do is go to Window, not here window, but the window in Unity, Window Rendering Lighting, where we know that's the place we usually change skyboxes. And we're just going to copy what it says here. So first of all, under Environment, instead of the default skybox, the skybox called My Night Sky. Good. The source, the sun source, is going to be the directional light. And the shadow color is going to be much grayer and darker. All of this, of course, it doesn't have to be exact numbers because it's like, to taste. Skybox, and the intensity multiplier is going to be 0.61. Because again, making it much, let me show you, making it more, the environmental lighting. See how this affects it? So I want it to be, rather low. I want to have a little bit of it because if I have 0, there's going to be places in the city that are 100% dark where we couldn't see at all. So I'm giving it a little bit of environmental lighting. I just, chose 0.6 or 0.61, made it look okay to me. But of course, you can play around with those numbers. After that, skybox, 128 auto, we're not changing any of that. Intensity multiplier 1 and bounces. These do not change. Then we're going to add some fog. Fog basically, in this case, means losing color as the distance increases, or losing color and detail as the distance increases. So I'm going to enable fog. The color I'm going to use, we might have discussed this before. When it comes to fog, the darker the color of the fog, the less foggy it looks. I know it's almost like it doesn't make any sense. But if I make the color of the fog totally white, that's more fog. Black means less fog. So I'm putting it like, like a gray in the middle, kind of like the one to match the one in the, like a 50% gray. I'm also going to use the kind of fog called linear, which means it's directly related to the distance, with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 300. That's like the distance. As far as all the other numbers, no 2D texture, strength 1, halo strength 1, and flare strength 0. And that's pretty much it. Cool. And now, notice that most of the light that I'm seeing is actually from the gems. So if I save and I say like, what would it feel like walking around this city? Notice, by the way, that now I get like, if I get too far, I get, all this fog and all this stuff. What would it feel like if I actually walked through this city? So I can do what we did before, disable the OVR player controller, enable the temporary FPS controller, and try walking inside this city. Look at the game window. Now that's a lot more like a haunted city. And of course, everything we do, I can see, the dust storm that looks like, like if it looks too light, too dark, it definitely does not look, like happy in daytime. I think the time to make all those judgments on whether it's too light or too dark would be once you see it in the Quest. For right now, it's definitely close enough. So I'm going to stop, disable the FPS controller, and re-enable the OVR player controller and go back to the guide. Let's add music. The one last thing we need to add to this scene is some music. We're going to create an empty game object, call it music. Its location is going to be reset. The only thing music needs is a component called audio source. And the name of the music is going to be Benezer City Music. I'm going to make sure it loops because it's only about 2 minutes, and play on awake, and volume 0.5 because I don't want it to be overwhelming. I want it to be kind of like in the background. So the music source is going to be Benezer, not day music, but city spell music. It's going to play on awake, end loop, and the volume is going to be half. So when I play, let's see if my speakers are on. It's, dark, mysterious, moody music. If you find that it's distracting, you can, turn off the music temporarily, as long as you can remember to turn it on by the time that you build. So we're going to save our save project. Basically, our main scene is done. What we need now to do is our win scene. So if we look at this is where we are in the win scene. I'm going to stop this tutorial, although it was a little shorter than others, to dedicate the rest of what we're going to do to creating the win scene, because it has also a little script in it. There's not too much left.